So before we start, I would like to thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you. Okay, we might go to the first slide, and this is how we start all of our meetings at Everyday Independence. And we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. And I'd really like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders as the first people of Australia. The second thing we do all the time when we meet at Everyday Independence is we speak to our why and we acknowledge our why. And our why at Everyday Independence is that we strive every day to lead and support individuals, their families, communities, and our nation to be global leaders for inclusion. And we are really passionate about this. And this, you'll see some of our values tonight, but one team with purpose is one of our values, and everybody works towards this goal. We've been working in the NDIS now since inception, since trial, and it became really apparent to us, even just 3 to 4 years into the NDIS, that the bar was being set quite low for disability services and for people living with a disability. And we really wanted to raise that bar. And the way that we did that is we actually curated evidence from across the globe, and we started to look at what is possible, especially when it comes to capacity building and therapeutic supports. And we've created the Everyday Way, again, which you will hear about tonight, but it really does set the bar for saying, let's make inclusion possible for all Australians, and let's lead the globe in doing that. Because the NDIS is actually a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and the NDIS Australia, believe it or not, is leading the way in this space. So it is really exciting that we have the opportunity to not just be national leaders, but actually global leaders, and really change the way and the opportunities for people living with a disability have today, but even perhaps more so for children today that are born with a disability or perhaps acquire a disability in their lifetime. Because we know this reform is going to take 10, 20, maybe even 30 years. That's what Medicare took. And certainly, again, it's a really incredible scheme, and we're hoping to achieve the same with the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So our why, this is what we try to achieve every day. So how do we do that? We do that actually by working in a social model of disability, but we do that also by being values-led. And you'll find that our values are very much steeped in a social model of disability. These values really speak to all stakeholders within the Everyday Independence brand. So whether or not you are a participant and you're using our services, or you're an employee at Everyday Independence and you're providing services, these values will apply to you. We worked out very, very quickly when we were doing the work on our why that it doesn't matter who you are. Everybody wants to build skills. Everybody wants to build confidence. Everybody is hoping to achieve the goals that they set for themselves in their lives. And so our values really speak to that. We want to change the game. We want to level up. We need to imagine for people. We really need to inspire with belief. And we really need to support people to imagine what a life as an employee or perhaps a participant is truly possible for them. Person-centered practice is at the heart of a social model and the heart of what we do, and that's all about championing the person. And we all know that sometimes these systems and processes can get a little bit convoluted and busy. So we're really committed to simplifying and really removing the noise for people with a disability, but also removing the noise for our practitioners and our therapists, and creating great products where they can go out and have great impact. And as I spoke about before, one team with purpose is for a lot of people at the heart of what they do and really connects us all to our why. So I'm going to start this evening by telling you a story, and this will really lead into our Everyday Way, which is, as I said, the model that we have developed from curating the evidence from across the globe. I worked with a young man called Charlie, and Charlie was 18 years of age, and he came to see me many years ago now for a mini tramp. the NDIS plan had said that he needed a mini tramp. So he came to see me, and he had a mum that he came with, and he also came with his assistance dog. And when we were doing the assessment, I very quickly worked out, we work in interdisciplinary teams, that Charlie wanted a mini tramp for much more than just exercise. He was using it to self-regulate. Charlie, I should have shared with you, lives with autism spectrum disorder and a moderate intellectual disability, and he was 18 years of age. And as part of the assessment, I asked Mum, what's Charlie going to do when he finishes school next year? And Mum said to me, oh, well, I think I'll give up work and I'll look after Charlie, because we've tried a few different day programs and Charlie hates day programs. So I think it'll just be Charlie and I. And I said to her, oh, is Charlie not going to work or perhaps continue on with his education? And she looked at me and she said, Charlie has autism and an intellectual disability, you know. And I said, yes, I understand that, but now we have the NDIS. Let's have a think about what Charlie can do. Anyway, fast forward, we wrapped an interdisciplinary team around Charlie. As I mentioned, Charlie came with his dog. Charlie had a huge love of animals, and Charlie now works for between 20 and 30 hours a week in a veterinary practice. Charlie is a taxpayer. Charlie's mum stayed in full-time employment. She is also a taxpayer. So what does this mean? This means that Charlie has his own thing to do. He has purpose in his life. He has things that he's really proud of. He has friends at his work. His mum actually told me that he wanted to spend Christmas Day with his friends, that she was a little bit annoyed about, but we had a giggle because how age appropriate is that for a 22-year-old to want to hang out with their friends? And Charlie's mum has continued in full-time employment. She's not on a pension. She has super. She's a mortgage holder. She is doing really well in her job, and she can afford to buy Charlie and herself the things that they need, and they even go away on holiday. So massive win for their quality of life, and I think a massive win for mankind. But it's also a massive economical win, because if Charlie's mother had given up work to look after him, she would have become on a disability pension, disability carers pension. Charlie would have been on a disability pension, and that would have cost the Commonwealth somewhere between $4 and $8 million over the cost of Charlie's lifetime. But Charlie now is a taxpayer, and so is Mum. So they're actually adding money to the Australian economy. So when people say to us, will the NDIS work? Can it work? Absolutely. It is already working. But it is the supports and the infrastructure and the way in which we support people to be active, participating, civic and economic members of their community. And the way that we do that is through the everyday way. So how do we do it? We work in interdisciplinary teams. We have OTs, physiotherapists, speech pathologists, and then we have a number of focus programs, positive behaviour support and early years program. And the people that join those programs can come from a variety of backgrounds: nursing, social work, teaching backgrounds, developmental educators, you name it. We also have habit coaches, which you might hear a little bit about tonight. Habit coaches are the glue that brings the building of the habits and the skills and routines together. So habit coaches are similar to allied health assistants, but they work with the team and support families to build habits and skills and routines. Families love it because they get outcomes faster. Therapists really like it because they actually see the magic that can happen between therapy sessions, not just during therapy sessions. And we do that all embedded in a social model of practice where we don't look at someone like Charlie and think, what can't Charlie do? Or Charlie has autism, or Charlie has an intellectual disability. But rather we look at Charlie and we say, what can Charlie do? And what supports and what attitudes and beliefs and contextual factors do we need to change to support someone like Charlie to live the life that they absolutely deserve and have the potential to do? And then there's lots of other things that you might hear about tonight. We have a lead tool, which is industry leading. There were plenty of other things that I was even looking to this slide before we came on tonight. We have our new functional assessments, which are industry leading, and we've got team members now that have, I think, 180 therapists that have done that training now, and that's being rolled out across Australia. So we are looking for people to be able to come in and learn these skills but we also need people with experience to come in and be able to mentor and be subject matter experts and support our younger generation of therapists as well. So I think, you know, one of the things we're super proud of is that these career clinical pathways, which is what tonight is about, is that it is the infrastructure to support us to meet the goals of the NDIS. So we are going to build a workforce by having clinical pathways where people know the steps they need to take to progress in their careers, which then ultimately serve participants. And it's going to support people like Charlie and the many other families that we work with to be able to choose what they buy, to be able to buy well, to be able to get great value, and most importantly, to have outcomes, not just do therapy, but have outcomes that are going to impact and change lives. So I'm really excited to bring this evening's event to you, because hopefully that will all come together when you hear from our panel this evening. So I'm going to talk, before I hand over to the panel, a little bit about how we do that. We do that first with designing the model, which I spoke about tonight, which is the everyday way. And then we also need to have a great infrastructure that can deliver that model and lead the charge for change. So we've got incredible thought leaders in our organisation. Just this week, it's OT week, and the OTs are busy preparing their abstracts for the next OT conference that's happening in Perth this year. But we do have a number of people that are presenting at conferences throughout Australia. I think, Trish, we're going to hear from you soon, but you've just been inspired very much by the physio conference, I think, that you attended just a couple of weeks ago. So I might ask you about that. Sorry, Esther, we'll just go back a little bit just to that slide. So we need great leaders that are out there doing evidence-based practice, collecting great data. Data is king, and that's really going to be able to inform us of our practice. So then we need to have these leaders leading teams. So Esther, thank you. The next slide would be fantastic. And the teams are built by the most incredible humans in our organisation that are enthusiastic, that want to progress their careers. So we have created career clinical pathways. So there's too much information on this slide, but what we heard from our employees for a number of years is, I kind of know how to get there, but I'm just not sure what steps I need to take to be able to get there. So we've got career pathways now that are mapped out for people. And there's about 7 career pathways that you can choose from. And some people move between the career pathways as well. They're not, once you're on the road, you're set in stone. But it really provides a framework for us to be able to develop and support practitioners so they can go out and get great results for the people that we support. So that's something that I think that, you know, Everyday Independence has invested a lot of time and effort in, and a lot of co-design and collaboration has gone into this. And it now means that we're able to develop a workforce that is really fit for purpose. Next slide, please, Esther. So we know where you're going. We know what career you're going to have. We know what you need to do, but how do you get there? And again, you'll see a really common theme that everything is very much embedded in a social model. So at the heart of a social model is person-centered practice. The way that we support you is employee-centered. And I don't have time to go through this tonight, but there really is a huge amount of supports that we can wrap around the person. And depending on what your needs are or where you are in your career, you're able to pick and choose from these supports. So some people really benefit from one-to-one support and shadowing and mentoring. Other people will really benefit from communities of practice. So we're able to harness the knowledge from across all of our hubs across Australia, where discipline specific will get on and discuss a particular topic. One of the things that I love is everyday therapy mentoring. So we're using technology, digital drop-in sessions where you can drop in and find an experienced practitioner somewhere in the country to be able to answer your question. But then again, that hub-based support. So I feel really humbled when I read this quote from Charlotte, that she never felt out of her depth because she always had the support for her to be able to really lean into a challenging or a new situation. So that's the type of culture that we are really trying to embrace at Everyday Independence. And we're really trying to embrace getting in there and having a go, but feeling supported. Exactly the same way that we're trying to do that with participants. Come on, just have a go and we'll support you to do that. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. We'll try again. I often say to people, the pathway is a little bit like the stock market. It eventually goes up, but there's lots of bumps and things along the way. And that's what people with a disability do and need to be able to do and need to be given the dignity to be able to do that. And I think that's exactly the same when you're trying to transform a profession and a workforce. So if we do have audience members here tonight that are thinking that really interests me, I'm really curious about that, but how do I actually make that jump? That's what career clinical pathways are about, supporting you to make that jump in a way that you feel supported, but you're really able to push at your edges and grow and develop. And yes, before we go to the panel, I think this is a really great example. I mentioned before we have 7 clinical career pathways and people move between different clinical career pathways. Others tend to just take a more forward trajectory. And Morgan's a great example of that. She joined us as a new graduate. She was really passionate about working with children, so she trained in the key worker model and then became a therapy mentor where she was able to support younger, earlier career clinicians coming through. Through that, she really discovered her passion for being able to drive and support teams, and she became a team leader. And I'm talking in the past tense, but I'm hoping only for maybe another 6 months or so. Morgan is actually now on purpose leave. So she's taken a year's leave to go to the UK and to be an OT in the NHS, and then she'll come back and she will join Everyday Independence. So I really hope that showcases for you the flexibility, but the win-win situation that you can create when you are on a structured pathway, but where you have autonomy and the ability to be dynamic within it. So let's get to the better part of the evening. This is the part I always enjoy. I'm so delighted tonight to welcome our panel. We have Trish Hill. I've worked with Trish, I think, for 12 years now. Trish is our clinical education and physiotherapy lead, and Trish is going to speak with us first this evening. I'll then introduce the panel in turn, but Kate and Alice have also joined us this evening. So please stay around because they've got great stories to tell. So Trish, as I mentioned, we have a star-studded panel tonight, but we're really excited to welcome you. 12 years. I'm not even going to start to talk about all of the roles and the clinical career. I think when you started, there were no clinical career pathways, and you've been part of the person that's been very much involved in the co-design of that, operational and clinical pathways. But I think, you know, I'm really looking forward tonight for you to be able to show us what a career can look like at Everyday Independence. So thank you for joining us and a huge welcome.
Thanks, Ingrid. Yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking to all of you more about my journey and sharing some of my experience.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to kick off with, let's go back all those years ago. I think it's 12 years ago now. What attracted you to Everyday Independence? And what were you not experiencing perhaps in your work elsewhere that you were then seeking in terms of making a move?
Yeah, so it was a while ago. So I think there's probably a couple of things in this, in that there was what it attracted me initially to Everyday Independence, and then there's what's made me want to stay. So there's I see that as two things for me being here for such a long time. So my journey started in acute pediatrics. So my background's physiotherapy. And so I started in acute massive hospital, and then I moved to a more of a rehab hospital setting and worked in a special developmental school along the way as well. Then worked in the community at a SOL early childhood intervention provider. And I really missed the variety in that role. I felt that there was just limitations in the scope and what I could achieve there. And when I thought ahead to, look, where do I want to be in 3 to 5 years in my career, I just couldn't see anywhere to go unless I was going to be a manager. I really enjoy wearing lots of hats. I love variety, and AI has given me so many opportunities over the years to try different things. Like that we saw that diagram with Morgan there, and I feel like my journey's been a bit the same. Try a bit of this, try a bit of that. So I came to EI as a physiotherapist initially, and that was my coming back to work, the workforce after having my children. So I had twin boys, and I was really looking for something flexible, something that had some variety, where I could, be a physio, but also work in the early years. And I really wanted to be able to be there for my kids when they were younger, go to athletics day and go to school excursion or do reading help in the morning, or, that flexibility was really important to me. And so I was able to do that at EI when they were little, and now they're big teenagers. They're happy for me to go off. They don't want me around. So I've been able to really evolve my roles and grow my career as that the family situation has changed. So I guess initially it was that varied caseload, ability to do different things, moving into mentor roles. And then I really just found that was my passion. That was my reason for being, was that mentoring and supporting other practitioners in their learning. That's what lights my fire. So I've been able to go down that pathway and also influence from a strategic perspective how the direction that EI has taken, with the pathways um, and the career structure and how we present mentoring and that sort of thing, the learning opportunities. So I've really, really loved doing that. So there's been a lot that's made me want to stay because of those opportunities and the strong value alignment. You talked about values earlier, and the alignment with the mission of global inclusion is really strong, and it drives everything we do in the organisation, which is great. And I have an opportunity to work alongside amazing therapists. The two other members of the panel here, I've worked personally with participants and through mentoring, so I feel really fortunate.
That's thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I think that that ability to still be able to progress your career and fuel your passion, but also be a mum. And you and I came from similar backgrounds, that acute setting, and really curious about what happens to these people when they go home as well. So it's just been the most incredible journey. And I've seen your long term, it's really been a real clinical focus for you. I remember over the years, come on, Trish, why don't you be a team leader? And you're like, no, Ingrid, I'm staying firmly in the clinical realm, which, until recently, you're right. It was, to go any further, I have to be a manager. And now the superstars can absolutely have those advanced practice clinician roles. But what would you say is the unique opportunity that EI provides for people looking to develop their clinical skills and then also be able to grow their career in that area?
Yeah. Well, as you say, I can't think of any other places that I'm aware of. I think you hit the ceiling as a clinician, and then from there, what's valued from there is the ability to manage people. And for me, that never felt like a good fit. So this is somewhere where you don't have to do that. You can continue in your area of passion and not have to give up a career progression as a part of that. I think that, you touched on it earlier with those career pathways, Ingrid, that there's variety. If I want to explore doing equipment, I can explore doing equipment. If I want to explore supporting behaviours, I can, or matching people with the right supports. Working in early childhood, there's so many different pathways that you can go down, and we really look to match the support with where you're at in that pathway. So I might be an experienced physio, but I might be really new to working with children. So we look at matching the support to help you when you're moving on that new pathway. So there's an abundance of opportunities that are available internally, as well as still being able to access professional development outside as well. We've got so many hubs now. I think 40, is it 40? 40
yeah,
hubs?
just over 40. Yep.
40 hubs, 6 different states. So, if I decide when the kids get a little bit older, hey, I want to live in Queensland and work from there for a while, have a bit of a sea change, that might be cool. So I think there's just so many things you can do with it.
It is interesting watching the hubs. I often say to people, we have people move for love and we have people move when love doesn't work out. And that's sort of with the younger generation moving through, but also often for career opportunities as well. But Trish, okay, so I'm hearing support. We can do all of these things, et cetera, et cetera. But come on, let's get down to it. What are the things that are in place for people to access their support?
So I feel like I need a big breath before this one because there's so much, right? So whether you're starting as a new graduate, so let's say you're a new graduate, you move into a new graduate learning stream. So you join with other new graduates wherever you join in the year. And for that 12 months, you learn alongside them every month. You cover a topic together, you learn together. You have a dedicated therapy mentor to move on that journey with you. So as a consistent person, you can build that relationship with and that trust together. And you've got a team leader who's supporting you with all your calendar management, making sure you've got a caseload that is in scope for you. And your mentor's helping to grow your clinical skills. So you get those two things, whether you're a new grad or not. It's just that your learning pathway might look a little bit different. You mentioned the online learning, that sort of using technology to learn and speak with someone who's a subject matter expert. So I can pick up the phone. I might have done physio for 100 years, doesn't mean I'm an expert in behaviour. So if I've got a challenging situation, I can jump on the phone, into a session, and I might get Alice, who's speaking a bit later, and say, Alice, I'm stuck. What do I do? This is a really challenging situation around behaviour. So I've got experts at my fingertips. So lots of support available for that drop-in support. Tons of online learning and resources that we have available, through our communities of practice as well. So again, learning with peers. So it could be discipline specific, or you can jump into another disciplines if you've got that curiosity. That there's so many things that you can do that sometimes people are like, where do I start? Talk to the mentors on the ground with you, talk to the person who you've got the relationship with. I want to do something. Where do I find it? Get that guidance, because there is, as I say, a lot. We've got Sally Smith, our career coach. So if you're thinking, what do I want to do with my career? You can sit down with Sal, make a grow plan, figure out what your vision is, and get support to do that. So there is just, as I say, just so much. And if you're like, oh, I really want to do that PD, there is a PD budget for each practitioner as well. So you can tap into that too. But we often hear from people, it's that personal connection that people value the most. And so, learning with your teammates as part of an interdisciplinary team, which is what we really know is most effective when we're supporting people living with disability, that's where you're getting that real connection and support, and in growth. So you can really, also help navigate all the other things on offer.
Yeah, I would completely agree that the hub life that we, our hashtag hub life that we promote so much is, we always knew it was important. And then COVID hit and we're like, oh, actually, it's so important for our growth, our development. It's such an important well-being factor, a protective factor for us all as well. So absolutely, I think we've got everything from super formal right down to the informal, having a cup of tea and checking in on each other. And you do that so well, Trish. So thank you so much for your contribution to that. I'm going to ask you perhaps one last question. Tonight on the call, we do have a number of people that are possibly very curious about working in this way, working in a social model, perhaps working in community. And we've already done this many times, but people have joined us perhaps from a nursing settings or core practitioners from a more medical model based setting, or we also welcome teachers that often come out of an education setting. So we have this chasm where people really need to, although they have great experience, they need to lean into that experience and translate that into a new way. So tell me, at EI, are we good at doing that? Not so good at doing that? How do we do that? What does that look like, or how would you describe that for our audience tonight?
Yeah. So I feel like we've evolved in how we've done this over the years, and we've learned a lot because we've done it for a while now.
Mhm.
So it doesn't mean we stop trying to evolve. We're an evolving beast. We're always striving to do things better. But I feel like we do set people up for success for that journey. If you're the induction we have is really quite comprehensive to get you off to a good start. We are always getting feedback on that, but we really look to front load that support so that when you join, you're supported lots early. You get all the tools of the trade that you need. You get all your learning that you can refer back to and sort of, you're not expected to take it all in straight away. Then you get support to put it into practice on the ground, and that's where your therapy mentor comes in. So I guess we've evolved and learned how to do that really well by listening to people who've been through the process. And for some of us, it's always a learning curve, right? Any new job's a learning curve. But when you're moving to something like working in disability in the community, for some it's a bigger jump than for others. But for me, for example, moving from working in that real medical model in the acute setting to being able to work in a social model was a gear shift, and so I was learning alongside peers how to do that. We often are supporting, say, teachers. They're used to being in a classroom and supporting kids on maths, in big groups. And what we'll often hear is, oh, it's so lovely to be able to put that extra time in to really support that child and family the way I've always wanted to do in the classroom, but haven't been able to do. So we group people together into cohorts. So you're learning alongside others who are making the same transition, and you're learning from people who've already made that transition. So we've all been there to some degree. And for some of us, it's like, oh, I'm mental health nurse and I'm used to working in a hospital or whatever. And now I'm moving the jump to community. So there's loads of people here who've done it before. And we've learned how to support people to make that transition over time. So it's all about that hub support, which I know we've talked about before, and really front loading that support so that you can get up and running, and get comfortable seeing people, because then you're doing the reps. If you're doing the reps, the comfort level grows really quickly.
Absolutely. And I think, that concept, we've learned a lot about cognitive dissonance and, really being able to lean into that and support people through that is absolutely an absolute joy, especially when you see that aha moment about the impact that they can have, right?
It's like, what do they say? They say when you're squirming, you're learning. Like, it's kind of that, I know I'm in that space and I'm going to be okay, but I feel a bit squirmy. Then you really know you're growing and learning. So, we definitely encourage people to be doing that, but doing it with support so that it's safe and they're okay.
Yeah. Trish, thank you so much. You and I could talk underwater about this stuff all day.
Somebody
but thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to the next member of our panel. Please stay around because we will have questions certainly at the end. But we're going to move on to Kate now. Kate Pert is one of our early childhood intervention specialists. Kate works in our Peninsula Hub and has been at Everyday Independence for, I think, just over 2 years now. Kate has a background in early childhood and primary education and came into Everyday Independence shone from the beginning, was working in the key worker model, was a key worker, but is now a key worker therapy mentor. And so what Kate does is she has her own caseload of children and families, but now also supports some of our key workers in their role as developing their role. So she's progressing through the clinical career pathway as well. Sorry, I wasn't very eloquent with saying it that way, Kate, but you've come in and you've shone and you've developed through the clinical career pathway, and now you're developing others to be able to come through the career pathway. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really happy to have you. And I think we've got you on mute, Kate, so it had to be one of us. So let's...
Yeah, sorry.
Excellent. Not at all.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, Kate, we have to take you back to over 2 years ago now. What attracted you to join EI, and what was it about working as an early childhood key worker that particularly appealed to you?
Yeah. Okay. So, as Ingrid said, I had my experience was mainly in early childhood classrooms and a little bit in primary schools, mainly early childhood. And I'd gone on to do some further study in special educational needs. And I was looking at how I wanted to make use of that new learning and everything that I'd done. And I was still motivated to work with children and families. So I wasn't ready to move out of that space, but I was becoming a little bit frustrated with not being able to support children and families the way I knew they needed. Having those big classrooms and that limited time to chat to families or to organise wraparound support for the children that I knew could really benefit from it. I was just finding that quite frustrating because I knew that for change to happen, it needed to be, a team approach, not just what I'm doing in the classroom. And so I was looking for a position that would allow me to work holistically with the children, their external support, and still have that input in the classroom as well. I still love in this role when I get to go out to kinders and spend time in there. I think I'd be lost if I couldn't still do that. And yeah, so this role came up and it was the absolute perfect role for me. And now I'm getting to, as Ingrid said, share some of my knowledge and experience in this role with people who are coming into it. And I'm really enjoying that as well.
Thank you, Kate. And I think I actually also maybe cut you a little bit short. Not only are you a therapy mentor, you've now been promoted to advanced therapy mentor. So you are the mentor that trains the mentors that trains people. So that's been a really, really exciting journey to watch. But let's go back to the key worker model.
Yeah.
For people that are listening tonight, can you explain a little bit more about what a key worker does and what a typical day might look like for a key worker?
Yeah, sure. So as a key worker, we work with the younger participants. So they're anywhere from 0 to 9. That's a new thing that it's going all the way up to 9, that have access to NDIS funding. So what it looks like is we'll receive a referral to see a child, and we'll receive usually a copy of their NDIS plan, so we can have a little bit of a read and see what's happening with that family. And then we'll go out and do what we call an initial consult, and that's where we meet with the child and family. Sometimes the family might prefer to have that done separately so that they can have a chat with you, and then another time you can meet the children. But during that initial session, you kind of chat with the family all about that child, their journey so far, the people in their life, what their week looks like. We do something that we call a routines questionnaire, where we go through their day-to-day from the minute they get up to when they go to bed at night, talking about what things are going really well, where there might be barriers for inclusion, things that the family might be struggling with or need some support with. And then together with that family, we create outcomes for the child. And so our outcomes at EI are always participation based. So we're not looking at, say, improve this skill or improve that skill. We're looking at, you might have the older participant that really wants to participate in the bike riding club at school, but doesn't have those skills yet, doesn't have the confidence. So that could be a goal, that by the end of the year, they'll be a participant in that bike riding club. And so then we do a therapy plan about, well, what does that look like, and what do we need to make that happen? And that might be that we include other disciplines in there as well, or a habit coach like Ingrid spoke about before. So we make that therapy plan, and then we will have ongoing visits with that family, and that can depend on how much funding they have, whether that's a weekly visit with them or a fortnightly. We generally see about 3 to 4 participants per day, and that's in a variety of locations. So you might go, like some of my days look like I'll have a session at a kinder, and then I'll have a family session at a playground, and then in a primary school, and then in a house. 2 days ago, I showed up at a participant's house, and I was expecting I'd in my head, I had that we were doing gardening, myself and the little boy and his grandmother that he's in kinship care with. But I showed up and she's like, he's on minimal school hours. And she said, oh, no, they said he can go on the excursion today, so he's not here. And I said, oh, sorry, did you get the reminder that I'll come? She said, yeah, but I still wanted you to come so that we can chat. So we still had that session, but it was just a capacity building session about everything that's going on in their life. So that can change as well. I'm with saying that capacity building, that is a huge part of the key worker role. So what we are trying to do is move away from that model of teaching and or clinical therapy. But what we're trying to do is build up the capacity of the people in that child's life so that they can continue progressing towards those outcomes between sessions. So, for example, say you're talking about learning to ride the bike. It's not just me going out there and teaching that child to ride a bike. It's like, well, how can we put this in your routine each day so that dad or older brother or mum can come out and do that with you each day to get you ready to go on this bike riding club. We call it that the magic happens between sessions. So that's what we're trying to do. And that's the same with the capacity building in classrooms as well. We're not going there to do therapy to the child. We're going out there to work alongside and collaborate with the teachers so that together we can make that outcome achievable. Because
Thank you.
Sorry, went too far.
Keep going. No,
sorry, one
going.
more thing. I'm nearly done. Yes, so we've got, none of our days look the same. We've got a mixture of being out in the community, working with participants, coming into the hub and having meetings with other therapists, writing reports as well. And every Wednesday morning we're all at the hub, so that's my favourite time of the week, and we have our team meeting and some extra learnings and everything like that as well. So there is always that time to connect with other members of the team.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's and I think there's so much there, but no 2 days are ever the same. But what I really liked that I heard from you is that you are actually spending a good amount of time with families. So you might be with them for an hour and a half and you're able to work with the whole family. I remember reading, let's say somebody has a therapy plan for 30 hours. They're with the therapist for 30 hours a year. They're at school for 600 hours a year, and they're with their families awake for about 12,000 hours a year. So that ability to build the capacity of families in the education system is really at the heart of the model and the way in which we work. So Kate, I want to hear, and you've already touched on some of it, but you're working as a key worker under a social model of support. What do you love about that?
Yeah, so like you've just kind of touched on, the achievement that these children and families can have when everyone is working towards that same outcome is huge. And also, I've loved the learning that I've gotten from working in that transdisciplinary model. So, for example, with so many of my participants, I'm their key worker, but within their team, one I've got at the moment, one child that I've just had come on my caseload, we have in our team OT, speech, positive behaviour support and habit coach. So the amount of learning and ideas that we can generate in that therapy planning meeting compared to if I was doing it on my own is huge. And the things that I've learned since coming into this company, that if I were ever one day to want to go back to teaching, that I would take with me is huge. So, for example, the social model, I started when I first started, one of my very first participants that I started with when I first came out, she had only had a speech at the time because it was a handover. Somebody had left the company, and the speech, he said, come on, Kate, come out with me. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to know. But we got there together. So I went out, and this little girl, she's 7 now. She would have been about 5 at the time. Very minimal communication. A lot of it kind of echolalia in scripts from movies and TV. And very frustrated, so wouldn't engage with us while we were there. Lots of kind of frustration and banging her head and engaging in those self-harm kind of behaviours. And at this stage, she was doing a early years program in a specialist school. But she got to the end of that. She got to the end of that year, and the specialist school said, without the testing done, she can't come back because we need to know, that she qualifies. And I said to Mum, well, you know what? She's only young. Why don't we do a second year of kinder, but do that in a mainstream kinder? And Mum had not even thought of that. And so she was like, oh, okay, if you think she can do that. And I said, yep. And so we got her into kinder. I supported the teachers to get the kindergarten inclusion support funding. So she was going to mainstream kinder, being exposed to lots of communication. The speechy and I did a lot of professional development around the Gestalt language processing. So how to support her in her own way of learning to communicate. And we took on some new approaches that even the speech she was learning for the first time. But the thing that made it work was that this mum took on the capacity building approach so well. So we had a core word of the week, which she focused not all her conversations, but all those routines. So, for example, if one week we were looking at up and down, anytime she could, she would use that by, placing things up high and say, oh, you want it from up there? All of this stuff. Mum was on board, all the visuals, everything. And now this little girl is in school. She is communicating so well, conversations with reciprocal back and forth, up to 3 or 4. She engages with me. She's laughing, she's smiling. And I can't believe the change that's happened. So that's what I love about it.
That's fantastic. And Kate, thank you so much. And we often say, well, what does that make possible for them? But what does it make possible for somebody if their improvement in communications in terms of their education, their relationships? And, we look at somebody like Charlie that we talked about at the beginning of today, the life trajectory changes that can happen, especially in the early years. It's such a privilege. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. You did speak about positive behaviour support practitioners. So we're going to move to Alice now, who is one of our super positive behaviour support practitioners. Alice joined Everyday Independence as a positive behaviour practitioner coming from a nursing background. So that's going to be really exciting for people to hear about tonight. And like Kate, Alice is also an advanced therapy mentor. So not just a mentor that supports people out in the field, but is training our mentors. So you can see the depth at which we go to in terms of supporting people along a clinical career pathway, but also the training of the people and the investment that we make, because it really does pay back in dividends, the outcomes for people with a disability, but also the job satisfaction that you can get when you are feeling really quite knowledgeable and skilled over what you're delivering. So Alice, I'm going to jump into question number 1 for you. A huge welcome. Can you tell us what a positive behaviour support practitioner does at Everyday Independence? And what appealed to you at the time that you were choosing this career pathway instead of pursuing a traditional nursing career?
Yes, I can do that. And
big
thank
question.
you for that introduction. It is a big question. So as a PBS practitioner at EI, we work with participants that demonstrate what we call behaviours of concern. So these are behaviours that might be impacting on their quality of life goals. So we work with the participant and their supports within their sort of familiar environments, so their homes, their schools, their day programs, to try and work out the why behind the behaviour, why someone's showing that behaviour in the first place. Once we've established the why, we then bring in our interdisciplinary teams, which I know Trish and Kate have both referenced as well, to allow that participant and the people in their environment to develop the skills needed so that they don't actually need to show these behaviours anymore, and they can start to make progress towards their quality of life goals. So I guess in terms of what drew me to EI, I think understanding people and the root causes as to why they show behaviours was a big part of what attracted me to the role. The social model moves away from that sort of medical model idea of placing the person at the centre as sort of, I guess in quotes, the problem. And it moves to looking to how the environment might be contributing to someone's need to show behaviours, and how we can work towards building a really capable environment around that person, so that we can facilitate them reaching their quality of life goals. And that approach is really straight away aligned well with my values and resolved a lot of the concerns I had working in the medical model around, I guess, discharging people into the same environment that they came in from, and then expecting to see a different result and just consistently seeing the same kind of outcomes. So that was really nice. I guess in terms of a day in the life of a PBS practitioner, as Kate and Tricia both referenced, every day looks really different. And I also love that variety, especially after working on a ward consistently day in, day out. So a day for me could look like starting my day seeing an adult participant at a day program. I then might move out into the community and see a young person, potentially in collaboration with like an OT or a speech pathologist. In the community, maybe doing some like public transport training is what we've been recently working on with one of my participants. I then might head back to one of our hubs that we've also referenced before to do some report writing. We write behaviour support plans to try and outline sort of what the implementation phase is going to look like and how we can actually work towards those quality of life goals. And at the hub, I might catch up with my team leader, or I might catch Trish at the hub for a physio consult, or one of our OTs or speechies, and get some input from our interdis team. So that's what a day could look like, I guess. Very different.
Fantastic. I think that's the common theme, isn't it? Our days look different because all of our participants are different and very much individualized, and we work with them on what they want to do. But Alice, I want to pick up on, your point around the outcome that they were getting by doing potentially the same thing in the medical system. But perhaps if you can give us an example of a participant that you've been working with and you've been able to achieve a positive outcome for them working in this model that perhaps might have looked different in the medical setting.
Definitely. I think a participant that I have that's a good example of this would be one of my young adult female participants who has a diagnosis of autism spectrum and Tourette's and OCD. So historically, she had some really challenging relationships with her supports, particularly at day program. They really struggled to engage with her, and she's such a cool person to engage with, but she could swear at them. She could maybe flip some tables over and say some kind of mean insults towards them, and they were sort of scared to engage with her. So when we came in, we did our initial assessments, and one of the first things we found was the need for a mental health assessment and diagnosis. And particularly for this participant, we had talked a lot with her mum around how her mum had felt that for a while, but had been dismissed by the medical system a little bit because I guess that disability was the primary presentation and it was a little bit more visible. So that was a really cool part of our role, and within the behaviour support scope is to advocate for our participants to get that mental health assessment. So she did see the acute mental health team, and they diagnosed the OCD, the depression, and the anxiety, and they prescribed an antidepressant or an SSRI to respond to that diagnosis. And that made a really big difference to her levels of agitation, and also to her family and her support's understanding of the agitation through the lens of that could be a symptom of depression as opposed to necessarily purely, I guess, behavioural. We also identified that her behaviours of concern were largely related to like frustration with communicating her needs. So she was struggling to sort of articulate words, and then when people didn't understand her, she could become really frustrated if she had to repeat herself 2 or 3 times, as we all do. And she had seen a previous speech pathologist within the medical model who had worked with her on her articulation, and that had maybe got her maybe 80% of the way there, but it just wasn't really doing it to get over that hill, I guess, in terms of when things were hard. So we did an internal referral and got one of our speechies on in the social model, and she worked around like different ways to communicate. One of the examples were pointing at things that she wanted or putting it into a sentence. So one of the things she liked to tell people a lot was to go away. So she would say, ready, set, go. And then her supports would know that that meant go. And they would know to give her some space when she needed her space. So that was really instrumental. Another trigger we identified was having a lot of anxiety around having people in her personal space. So the morning routine, getting ready, and also the evening routine, having a shower, washing her hair, was really challenging because she had to have supports like really close into her personal space. So we also got an OT on board to work with trying to create as much independence around those routines as possible and reducing the anxiety of having to have someone in her space for such prolonged periods of time. And that worked also really well. She started to get very independent with washing her hair and doing her self-care, and every time I arrive at the house she'd be like, I washed my hair, Alice, and then she'd be really excited and she'd want me to share that news with the OT who she'd been working on the skill with, so that was really nice. But I guess the big thing that came out of that was around capacity building her supports to understand her behaviours and see it through a lens of I guess her anxiety and her challenges with communication, and start to improve their relationship with her. And that's what she was craving, just those relationships with people not to be scared of her, you know, being able to talk about her dog and taking her dog for a walk and what the weather was. And she's really good with that now. She always asks for photos of my dog every time I go and see her.
It's amazing. It's amazing, Alice, because it's another example of what's possible for somebody. And you give me goosebumps because of the quality of life changes that just come with the human right of being understood. So it's such a terrific example. And I think, as you indicated earlier, people often just bounce in and out of a medical system. But then if we can actually unpack that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
That's okay. One final thing, though, that we're working on at the moment is that she's very keen. Her 21st birthday is coming up and she wants a party bus and she wants it filled with dogs. So that's her next life goal that we've got to work towards.
That's so cool. And again, very, very typical and normal for a 21-year-old. And I think I've heard that story before, but the filling the bus with dogs, that's a new iteration. So you've keep me updated. I definitely want to hear more about that. I do appreciate we're at 7 o'clock, everybody. We are going to go a little bit over time tonight. We'll just be another 5 or 10 minutes or so. And please, any questions also in the chat. I can see Cherie's doing a wonderful job of answering those. But Alice, there will be people on this Teams meeting tonight that are nursing practitioners and or perhaps other people that are thinking about this transition. What supports did you find most valuable in making the transition?
Yeah, I think, as Trish mentioned, there's so many supports, and I think, Ingrid, you mentioned it is a daunting time, that transition. I definitely am someone who finds those transitions like a little bit scary and a little bit overwhelming, but I did have so much support from day one. So we all have our own clinical mentor, and we also have our own operational team leader who's in our hubs all of the time. I think I say to everyone, my therapy mentor when I started EI was such a fundamental part to me building the career that I have now that I couldn't have even imagined when I started. She was so supportive and so present when I was putting myself into challenging situations. And there's always the scenarios where when you're new to a role, you don't know what you're doing. And so being able to be supported, to feel like you can jump into that and with the confidence of knowing you have the backing to catch you if something doesn't go to plan or you're not sure what the next steps are. And then my operational lead as well. I always felt like my operational lead really valued me as a person, and maybe it's coming from, you know, the big medical system that I didn't feel that in previous roles, and coming here and actually having someone who cared about my well-being, cared if I needed a little bit of extra time, and like sort of put myself as a person central as opposed to necessarily just me as a clinical therapist. So that was really big in terms of my support, and has just given me heaps of opportunities to step into new roles and new learnings. And yeah, I really valued that when I started, and I still do to this day.
Fantastic. Oh, absolutely. And we just want to continue to see the flourish happening. So let's wrap it up, Alice, with what's been the biggest takeout for you in terms of how you personally feel about the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's such rewarding work. I feel like, as I referenced earlier, it's so nice to feel like you're making a difference across a prolonged period of time, and actually impacting every aspect of someone's life and working towards quality of life goals. I think, as you mentioned in terms of Kate as well, in my clinical mentor role, now being able to support new practitioners feel sort of how I felt when I first started, and like supported to take risks and jump into new things and be there as that sort of backup for them, is also really rewarding. I think the biggest part that I love, though, is just being able to have the privilege of going into people's lives. And we see, particularly in the PBS space, but in all of our spaces, we see people at their absolute worst and we see them at their absolute best. and everything in between. And
Mm.
I think that that's such an incredible privilege. And I think all of those challenges, while they might not sound like the best part of the job, for me, they are the best part of the job. And I think if that's all I do for the rest of my career, that's a pretty meaningful career, and I wouldn't change it.
Fantastic. You took the words right out of my mouth, Alice. Thank you. Thank you so much. And to our panel, please stay around because we will stay on the line for some questions. But, you know, tonight, just the ability for you to be able to showcase what a career in disability could look like has been absolutely music to my ears. I feel incredibly humbled by it to be a part of a team. And I think what you've demonstrated through our clinical career pathways is that there's disability work and then there's disability work. And what I mean is what is fit for the future. So the NDIS has absolutely transformed the way in which people with a disability are now acknowledged, recognised and supported. And we have this opportunity that we cannot waste. We need to recognise the National Disability Insurance, the I scheme, because we've moved to a model that empowers and enables people rather than just, you know, provides welfare support. We've got a model that really supports people now to thrive and not just to survive. And I think that's true for the workforce as well. It's supporting now a workforce to be able to thrive in terms of career pathways. And our employees always tell us they are looking for cause, community, and career. And I think we've got that in buckets. I don't have time to take you through each one of those tonight, but certainly cause, community, and career is something that we can certainly provide. And we want to train people in a social model because that is what is fit for the future, not the old way of doing disability, not looking after people, not just making sure that they're okay, making sure they're safe. We'll do all of that and more. And that is what social model can absolutely do for the people that we support. So I'll get you to go to the next slide, Esther. I'm actually going to fly through these slides because we are at time and all of this information is on our website. But we do know that to build and enable a workforce to do all of the things that we're talking to you about tonight, that wellbeing, flexibility and growth is particularly important. You are able, in fact, you know, many of the people on this screen tonight from our panel and myself are parents, and the fact that we've been able to have the privilege that Alice speaks about, but to then be able to rear our families as well has just been something that is certainly nothing short of gratitude, and I'm grateful to be in the generation and in the circumstances that we are in. So all of that will be really important. Please look at that on our website. Esther, if we just go to the next slide, I think we've talked about this perhaps not so much tonight, but at the heart of being a practitioner that can give to others is about wellbeing and inclusion. So there's a real focus on wellbeing and inclusion, and you'll see in the next slide we talk about Hub Life, and they are, actually I'll come back to that. So if we can just go forward to Hub Life, Esther, but wellbeing and inclusion and Hub Life are very much interlinked. It's about how do you have that community feel? How do you be, belong and become someone? But then you have the added advantage of a larger organisation where you can tap into the most incredible mentors and supports. And I think that's probably what keeps many of us here. We're able to have that small local feel, but with the benefits of a larger company. But Esther, go back to the slide that I was going to miss. Let's talk about money. It is really important. The National Disability Insurance Scheme, as I mentioned before, is insurance. The sector, in order to enable and empower, has become more commercial. And this is actually only of benefit to the people that use our services, but it's also a benefit to us to be able to attract a really good workforce. So we actually have a base salary at Everyday Independence, which I would really encourage you to discuss with our team based on your level of experience and the skills that you bring, but then all of the things that you can do then to scaffold and build and stack your salary as well. So you've heard from somebody like Trish tonight, who's worked up through the through the scale, and so she's on a different scale to perhaps somebody that's just entering our organisation. You've heard from somebody like Alice tonight that is, you know, taking on mentoring roles. I'm just going to use you as an example. So she's been able to scaffold her salary by supporting others. And actually, Kate does the same thing. But Kate, I'm going to pretend you're somebody else. And some people do some extra appointments a week, and they're able to scaffold their salary by doing that as well. So similar to the way in which we train and support our team members, we're trying to offer choice and control and other opportunities for people to be able to accelerate their salary if that's something that's important to them as well. And there's a whole bunch of other things in there, again, on our website, but generous car options, professional development budgets. I think I mentioned Morgan's on purpose leave. So we've really tried to build a package that people can select from that's going to actually work for them. So we'll just go to the slide after Hub Life, which does bring us, I said we were going to finish about 10 past. I'm delighted to come in a couple of minutes early. And we've got some information also in the chat for you if you are interested in speaking with us. But we don't really mind what channel you use to connect with us, whether it's phone, email, web. There's also an opportunity which we're putting in the chat tonight where you can book in directly with me and have a conversation, or you can pop in the chat if there's somebody else on the panel that you want to speak to about what a role might look like. And we can certainly answer any of those questions. We don't mind if you are super early in your journey and just want to know a little bit more, or if you want to join us tomorrow. We are happy to talk to you about anything. As I mentioned, we're passionate about building a workforce, and that for people comes at very different stages of the journey for them. So I am going to wrap up. A huge thank you to everyone that joined us tonight. Please feel free to stay on. You can ask a question just by coming off mute and asking a question. You can pop it in the chat. And there's also another really cool feature where you can put a hand up and raise the hand, and we'll stay on and answer your questions. But thank you so much for taking the time tonight. Cherie, is there anything in the chat that hasn't yet been answered?
I have answered all the questions so far, Ingrid.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. Please don't be shy. We answer absolutely anything.
Hi, my name is Beck. Unfortunately I joined too late. I didn't realise about the daylight savings. So I pretty much missed. I think I missed the guts of it, which is unfortunate. But I've already. I'm going to get in touch with Cherie just to discuss.
Excellent.
Yeah, just to discuss some opportunities. And maybe, as long as it's okay with you, Cherie, if you could potentially maybe fill me in on some of the main points that I've missed tonight, if you're at all possible.
Absolutely. And I think it's also good to note, Rebecca, that we will send you a recording as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, so you'll be able to watch that in your leisure, but we can certainly discuss some of the points as well.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I was about to say
along.
to Ingrid, I think there's a few people in the chat that want to speak to Kate. So I will reach out to Kate once I've got those contact details, and we'll organise some follow-ups for that to occur.
Thanks, Cherie. I noticed that in the chat, and I know that's something we're doing at our hub. I'm not sure, you might be able to help me know if it's happening across the board, but we do have meet and greets. So for people who are interested, particularly educators who are thinking about being key worker, we had one come in today. So she came in and just met the team and had a chat about what that looks like and what the transition was like from the classroom to going into families' homes and things. So there's other ways you can get some information as well, which Cherie will help you to know about.
Absolutely. Thanks, Trish.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, my name's Dee, and I'm 20 years a primary teacher and then 15 years special needs educator. And I'm just wondering what would be the best role for me to apply for with that kind of background, and am I too old?
I'm going to answer question number 2 first. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Inclusion is our middle name here, and that goes across all bounds, and we really value expertise and experience. In terms of the better role for you to apply for, does anybody else want to answer that? Or do you want me just to jump in? I think everyone's being a bit quiet. Oh, Kate's coming off mute. Go for it, Kate.
I was coming off mute to say you go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to use Kate as an example. So perhaps not as quite as many years as you. You did say your name was Dee, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Dee. So what we would do is I would probably encourage you to apply for a key worker role. So what happens is when people come into our organisation, there are times that they will occasionally come in as a mentor or as an advanced therapy mentor, but most of the time, to enable them to be able to do that job, they need to learn how to do the role first. So if you come in or at least apply for a key worker role, then part of the interview will be that discussion of, well, what does the role look like now, and what is the opportunity moving forward, and how does that role look? Do you want that to be part-time or full-time? In what location? Because it all depends around vacancies and wait lists and children and things as well. So I think the key worker role would be the best role to apply for. Cherie or I can certainly reach out to you as well, but make it, interviews are a two-way exchange, really clear that, I might be looking for advancement in this space, but that level of experience certainly speaks to key worker.
Hi, Kate. My name's Jo. I just wanted to ask a quick question.
Yeah.
Can I just learn a bit more about, I asked the question, what it's like to go into someone's house, because I'm a kindergarten teacher, 16 years. Obviously, we've not done that sort of thing before. And so can you just walk me through, I think it mentioned in the chat about there being like a risk assessment and those sorts of things. And so what that entails, but also have you ever gone to someone's house where you haven't felt comfortable, and how you handle that, and how you continue to, build rapport with that client? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, how do you navigate that? What do you do?
Yeah, I 100% understand what you're saying. And look, there are, I think when you come into this role after working in a teaching role, you do have some experiences that can be quite confronting. Not just, I think when you're teaching, you're aware that some of the children will be living in a variety of homes, and that the socioeconomic groups that you're teaching are different, but to be in there and dealing with it firsthand is completely different. So what happens is our intake team and our admin, when a new participant comes on, they do a risk assessment with them, where obviously we require them to be honest and things like that. But everything is set up in a very structured way. So I won't get too much into detail with it, but when you go out for a job, we use like an app on our work phones where you check in, which sends to the whole system where you are. There's lots of policies around like where you should be parking, which rooms you should go into, that when you get there that you should be monitoring where the doors are. They even give you some examples of like what you could say if you are uncomfortable and need to leave. So we are across it, and that's part of your induction training as well. And there have been cases where I've gone out to families which I think have probably been referred to the scheme through the Department of Families and Fairness and Housing. Is that right? That's the new DHS. Yeah. and the family aren't 100% on board with it, but over time we develop that rapport and they realise I'm not there to judge them. I'm there to work with them for their child, and then gradually things become a lot more relaxed and a lot less hostile. But look, we like all kind of organisations, we have things like incident reports and near misses and things like that we need to report on. So we're very well aware. And our participants that we do need to be a little bit aware of, even in their files, you can pull up their page and it says, beware, like the child has a tendency to do this when heightened, or, you know, there's things that are put there to make sure that you're aware of what you're going into.
And when you first start in the role, can you go with another person, like another professional, until you feel comfortable to do it by yourself? And do you also have the option to have those visits in like a park, I think you said before, or in an office or a kinder or something can you do it that way? Or
yeah. So what happens in our what we call our induction program, Everyday Flying Start. So what happens with that is when you first start, it's usually a mentor, but if it doesn't quite align, it could be another therapist within your hub, but you will go with them to sessions and you'll shadow them. So you'll watch what they're doing and you'll learn from them. And then what happens is you'll go out and you might start to take a little bit more control over the direction of the session with them observing. And so what happens, it's a really gentle move from you observing to you doing it and you being observed. And we're not going to leave you on your own until you're ready. So once you're feeling confident, then that's when you'll start doing it yourself. And as for if you weren't comfortable being in a home, there is always that option to pivot to a park session or to do most of your visits at school and things like that.
Love that. Thank you, Kate. I think it's because my husband's a paramedic and he's told me maybe too when I first saw this and stuff, and I was like, I'm really interested in this, and then he was sort of just sharing his experience of going into people's houses as a paramedic, and that's the only thing that's kind of holding me back is finding that comfort. But what you've just explained sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No worries.
And I think just to add to that, I think we do a lot of safety training as well, so people can have certainly their antennas up and understand lots of different things. But a paramedic is often in a crisis situation. There's no pre-planning, there's no risk assessment, there's sort of no opportunity to change the environment. So it is quite different. But I think I do want to touch on what Kate mentioned before, because it is at the heart of what we do. And I think what we do really well is no judgment. So absolutely, our safety is really important, but you will definitely go into homes where, don't align with the way in which perhaps you live, but it's how we continue to support those families. And that's certainly a privilege in what we do. Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Quinoy, and I'm a early career speechie. I was just wondering if it's possible for us to sort of get a senior clinician to join in a session or an initial session, say if we had a complex client, because I know I'm not a fresh grad, but I don't know everything. So there will be clients where I have no idea what I'm looking at, say if it was a swallowing assessment. I would prefer to have a more senior clinician's input.
Thank you so much for your question. I'm going to ask Trish to take this question. Trish is on our clinical strategy team, which really determines the whole structure of how we support people, which includes complexity. So Trish, I'm going to hand over to you for that one.
No worries, Ingrid, and thank you for your question. So of feeling safe and being able to provide a quality service to our participants is absolutely at the heart of what we do. So we don't take that one lightly. So you're not going to be walking into a situation blind, I can tell you. The way that we structure the services we provide if it's an initial appointment and you're going out to a session, that session looks quite structured in the tools that happen. So you would never be asked to say, go out to a first visit and you're doing swallowing straight away. There'd be a lot of information to guide you, and you will be linked from that very first week with a therapy mentor that's the same discipline as you. So that means you would be linked with an experienced speech pathologist that you would be able to get that clinical guidance and support from. And in that example that you gave, if it was to be a swallowing assessment, we wouldn't send you out to do that unless you felt comfortable to do that. So there would likely be some work done from a training perspective and with you and your mentor to ready you for that situation. So we make sure that that's built into our processes and structures, that safety for you and for the participant, so that you're always going to be working with that safeguarding in place.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. We're always excited to talk to speechies. There's not enough of you in the sector, so we're like, oh, we love speeches. You guys can have such an impact across, early childhood and behaviour support and supporting participants across the lifespan. So, yeah.
I would agree. The potential for speech pathology in this space is just absolutely enormous.
100%. So we have experienced speech pathologists who are therapy mentors, and a speech pathology lead that looks at, do we have the tools that we need? Do our practitioners have those tools at their fingertips? Do they have the learning that they need? Sometimes there might be a speechy at your hub who would come along with you. Sometimes it might be, we use tech a lot too, to provide that mentoring support and shadowing as well. So we'd always be looking to provide you with the right support so you could give that participant the support they need to.
Thank you. One of the other things mentioned earlier on is that if you're a key worker, you're sort of seeing 3 to 4 clients a day. Would that be the same caseload for a speechy with EI, or what?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So on average, we find that our team members who are doing really well, really hitting their strides and doing great things in terms of achieving outcomes, tend to see about three participants a day, remembering that they're longer sessions. So they're often that 90 minutes per session, and there's travel involved as well. So if you're seeing 3 people a day every day, then you're doing really well.
Okay. And I'm guessing we would be managing our own calendars as well.
Great question. I love your questions. You put a lot of thought into this. This is great. So we have some say and oversight into our calendars, but the way that we structure things, you don't have to book all your appointments in. So we try and lighten the load from therapists so that where possible, if there's something that admin can be doing, chasing up, playing phone tag with that person who it's hard to catch, we can delegate as much of that as possible. And what we tend to do is have a calendar template. So you can set that template to say, I want to go to yoga on a Wednesday afternoon, and so therefore I'm going to finish a bit early that day and I'm going to make my hours up other ways. So you then template that and say, here's the calendar I can do. Admin, go for it. And that way you're not owning having to fill it up yourself. But similarly, if you do want to make appointments, you can do that. But we try to take the noise away so you can focus on what you do best.
Okay. Well, just one last question. What about funding requests? Do we chase it up? Or, yeah.
What do you mean by funding requests? Like to the NDIS? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So that's a really important part of what we do, but we bundle it all up with our reporting. So part of our requirement under the NDIS, if we're using NDIS funding, is that we need to let the NDIS know what was that funding for. What did we achieve? How much funding did we use from what was allocated? And then in order to outline to the NDIS what we want them to put in that next plan, we say, here's what the participant wants to do next. Here's their future goals. And we map it out for them. So it sounds like I'm saying we do a lot, but the way that we build our processes in, we're not writing really wordy, long reports that are just essays that no one's ever going to read. Our reports are really stripped back, data driven. They don't take a long time to do. So, you know, I know it's a little bit different for the early childhood ones. They have a slightly different process, but for the core, so speech, physio, OT, our reports are really data driven. So we absolutely want to tell the NDIS, hey, this is what this person wants to achieve, and here's the support they need to do it. So so please put this much funding in their NDIS plan. But our learning around that is really structured. So you'll be supported well to know how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, again, to everyone, a huge thank you for joining us this evening. I will stay on for a few more moments after this. We'll say goodbye to everybody else. There might be somebody that doesn't want to ask necessarily a question in a really public forum. So perhaps Cherie, if you and I are just happy to stay on just for a few more minutes. Cherie and I work in the talent acquisition team, so you can certainly call us as well and ask any questions that perhaps occur to you after tonight's event. So thank you so much. I would like to, before we say goodbye, a huge thank you to Esther. Esther's been the quietest on the call tonight, but Esther is the person that makes this happen. So all of the things that happen behind the scenes, Esther, thank you very, very much. We truly appreciate you. And the way that I can see the panel nodding away because she's even supported the panel to get everything together. And Alice, Kate, Trish, I could listen to you all day. Just a genuine, heartfelt thank you for the way that you support not only our team members, but participants. And you can see many of us have the Y on the back of our screen, and it's just so evident how you live and breathe that every day. And Alice, you've got Inspire with Belief. That's probably my favourite values. So thank you so much. We're going to let you leave us. I'm sure there's probably dinners on tables for you, or somebody's had something just before. So thanks so much, and look forward to seeing you back at work as early as tomorrow. Thank you.